Yo, what's going on YouTube? This is Broman Clash, and today, or in the evening, depending on which part of the world you're in, I want to talk about a topic that, it pertains to racism, and some of you are saying, like, Clash, what a surprise. You always talk about racism. Why do you want to keep on talking about it? It's because, everybody's trying to ignore it, and people thought it disappeared somewhere in the civil rights era, but it didn't. It still continues and persists to this day. But I want to talk about one certain aspect of it. And some of you are asking, what is it, Clash? Because I can hear the boredom and the sighs coming right now. And you want to know what it is? Ethnocentrism. See, when we talk about ethnocentrism, you must ask, what is it? It's a belief in that a people or a person believes that their culture is superior to one upon another. Now, how does this tie in with racism? See, look, when you deal with ethnocentrism, you have to think that, oh yeah, these groups of people, they're uncivilized. They don't know how to act. They don't know how to be. They don't know our way of life. They're savages. They are just people of utter disgust, discontent, and they should not even be, acknowledged as human beings. Well, let's put it like this. I always point to this little box right here, TV, that bullshit right here. That's a that's another form of ethnocentrism right there. And how the way people use TV to promote certain amount of culture onto like another state or another country or another continent, and how the way that continent is superior to another, albeit subtly. Like for example, have you noticed when it talks about Africa, it talks about the mother continent as poor, disease ridden, and overall a place where you don't want to go. If you look at its history and look at what it's been through, especially when it comes right down to what the disease was purposely planted there, HIV and AIDS, it's been purposely planted there. Then there was the constant wars, especially during World War II, if I'm correct, or World War One, especially when Mussolini tried to invade Ethiopia. And then you got apartheid, you got basically colonization, imperialism. That's another form of ethnocentrism, or it ties deep into it. In imperialism, they believe that you have to conquer smaller smaller countries or smaller groups of people in order for it to be collect into like the collective of the bigger power or the bigger country. But then, and if you look tie into that, you realize that Africa is not being, it's not the poorest continent, it's the most robbed. And I know some of you are just saying, but Clash, you've been saying this all this time. You've been saying it all this. You mentioned little subtle hints. You mentioned all of this. Why are you talking about ethnocentrism? It's because, some people think, America is the greatest place to live. People think America changed. People think America is like the superior all, know all, and it has, various resources and all that. But anyways, when you talk about America, you're talking about a country that, exploited, that killed, that destroyed cultures, and definitely destroyed minds. Especially when you look at, what's wrong with my people, and especially when you tie that in together with, what happened in slavery times, what I call slavery times, I call them embondishment periods where our people were in bondage. Well, not maybe bondage is a bit too soft. Enslaved. They were right. We were enslaved. We were indoctrinated into believing that their way of life was better than our way of life. And you want to know what the real sad part is? When we believed that, we lost our way of life. We lost who we are. We lost our identity. And then it started to come back as soon as we started building up for ourselves. And the 60s, well known, during like the late, like the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, that's when we start building back our identity. But then 80s, 90s, during the war on the so-called war on drugs, the drugs were pushed in by the FBI, CIA. It was pushed into the black communities on purpose. And then bad policing, and all that other crap. And some of you are asking, how does this tie in with ethnocentrism, Clash? How does this tie in with all this, bro, man? Answer us. You want to know why it ties into that? Because ethnocentrism first starts with the mind. Then the mind conditions the physical essence or the body to do certain things. Commit atrocities upon other people. And if people don't comply with those demands, which I call atrocities. And why do I say atrocities? Because they're evils that are committed, they're evils committed, but yet they try to justify and try to, swirl them around and try to make them look good, even though it's been proven and time again that it's evil. Because not only it harmed people's health, it ruined lives, not even ruined, killed many lives, even caused a genocide of a people. Well, like a near genocide, because there's still a few natives left, Native Americans left, indigenous people to be more exact, because calling them Native Americans is a bit of a disrespect, because, why call them after an oppressor, especially when they were the original people that lived here. And to make matters even funnier, when you really look at, how the way people practice ethnocentrism, they essentially practice a mental form of indoctrination. And then that mental form becomes physical. Just like what was said before. Adolf Hitler once said this, even though he's a piece of shit. But he said something I will never forget. You want to know what he said? He said, no matter how ridiculous or how absurd a tactic or a propaganda is, as long as you keep on pounding it into the people's heads, they will eventually believe it. I said a mouthful, didn't I? Now, if you take it into that context of what I said and how the way this connects into ethnocentrism and how the way it connects to the whole thing with racism, white supremacy, and, everything else. And people are talking about Black Lives Matter. People are talking about, oh yeah, we should just be peaceful. No. That whole we shall overcome, singing, dancing, kumbaya. Hey, there's nothing wrong with being peaceful, but just like what was said before, and Kwame Ture said it well, the only way peace will work is if your enemy has a conscience. If your enemy has a conscience, then peace will work. But if your enemy doesn't, then what's the point? Honestly, what's the point? You have to be real. Because ethnocentrism is just a mindset turned into a reality. Just like, race, gender, and all that crap. Even though even race and gender are just, social construct. Well, you can be born into like a certain group of people, that's biological, and you can be born into like a certain gender, that's biological. But to have like a certain aspect or a certain, stereotype. See, now that's where ethnocentrism comes into play, because stereotyping. And I mentioned before about stereotypes and how the way it also plays into, I think I did stereotyping before, and I mentioned Johann Friedman Blumach, and he talked about how the way there are 5 different races of people, but yet he said, do not use anthropology as a form of biasness or to promote it, because everybody has their culture and everybody excels in it. But people people didn't listen, and people thought like, wait a minute, let's just ignore this. This is not a part of us, and we should practice what we know, and that's indoctrination. One notable example, like I said before, slavery, and how the way slavery was born onto us and then taught us how to be our oppressor instead of being ourselves. And what did Kairos once said in Higher Level? You want to know how we screwed up in the beginning? We accepted our oppressor's religion. Now, it's very funny because when you deal with, a religion from your oppressor, they're not trying to deal with it in a broad or humane perspective, dealing with a global perspective. You know what they're doing with? With a small perspective, with a case of trying to dominate. They're not trying to promote unity. They're just trying to promote a business. And sad enough, we were just a commodity. My people, Africans, Africans here in America, Africans in general, we were just here just to be a part of a business. We were never, and believe it or not, the first stock, the first insurance, yeah, believe it or not, out of all the things you thought insurance started with cars, started with houses. No, the first stock and the first insurance were us. Yes, they put insurances on us because they didn't think of us as human. They thought of us as property. Now, that's how far ethnocentrism will go, but that's just like a little bit compared to what ethnocentrism could do. Because when it comes right down to ethnocentrism, you know what it does? It essentially, like I said before, it closes the mind but opens the mouth. It closes the mind of information that people can and will be different, but then opens the mouth to indoctrination, trying to say, yes, this is what we need to do. Yes, this is what you should do. Screw your culture. This is your culture now. This is your home. And then, now I mentioned before how the way stereotypes play into ethnocentrism. Now, if you really think about it, because some people have like a preconceived notion of, different groups of people, like I said before about like Asian people, squinty eyed and all that crap. And then black people, fried chicken, basketball and all that crap. White people, friendly, smart, fat and all that crap. Like I said, they're all just crap, man. And it's very funny when I see this. Back then, they made fun of black people, being of dark skin, thick lips, and black women, big behinds, breasts. And then look, not even like fast forward to now. They're trying to get lip injections to look like us, butt injections to look like us, trying to tan their skin to look like us. The old saying, I want something, I want some chocolate. They were not talking about, the plant or the candy. They were talking about, either, black men or black women that look like me. Hell, I'm chocolate. Nah, I'm just jiving, y'all. But I'm just saying that's a bit true because some people speak in euphemism. They don't speak directly to you. But to believe that another people's culture is superior to yours is the same as believing that there is no progress or evolution. People are going to evolve and they are going to progress. But if you hold yourself back by having a closed mind but yet an open mouth, then essentially you failed at one part of living that needs to happen. And you want to know what that is? That's not only change, but acceptance. And ethnocentrism doesn't allow that. And I talked about, racism and white supremacy. Now, how does ethnocentrism tie into racism and white supremacy? Remember what I said before. Ethnocentrism believes that a culture is superior, or a belief is superior over all others, or a belief. So what happens when a belief becomes into a culture? Well, I talked about how the way, white supremacy dealt with laws, judicial systems, cops, and, dealing with all of that. And how the way cops are not here to uphold the law, they're just here to keep down a certain group of people. Now, when you look at, judicial laws and how the way there were laws that were placed to keep us in bound, in chains, and to make sure that, hey, make sure this certain group of people don't have these certain amount of rights, because they believe that not only their culture was inferior, but the people were inferior. Now, another part of, white supremacy, and some of you may not believe me, but, back then, if you really thought, way back when, they thought of women as second-rate citizens. And now, I remember something, and it's an African proverb. You teach a man, you teach an individual. You teach a woman, you teach a nation. Because in African civilization, we value the woman. We value her because we know she gives birth to humanity. Not just a simple plaything. And it's real sad that when we practice, ethnocentrism of a Eurocentric dynamic, what happens? We devalue the woman. Our culture becomes not only self-absorbed, but it becomes destroyed. Our people loses their morale. We lose respect not only for our elders, we lose respect for our children. We lose respect for everybody. We lose respect for ourselves. And just like what Malcolm X once said, have you forgotten that once we were brought here, we were robbed of our name, robbed of our language, we lost our religion, our culture, our God. And many of us, by the way we act, we even lost our minds. Now, some of you may ask, what does all of this have to do with ethnocentrism? Now, I mentioned before about culture and how the way some people believe that their culture is more superior than other people's culture. Now, I mentioned about white supremacy and how the way that ties in to ethnocentrism, and how the way culture ties into ethnocentrism. If you notice, I'm talking about how a way of life encompasses ethnocentrism, because ethnocentrism, like I said before, it's a belief that one's own culture or belief is superior to another's. And there were people who were oppressed because of that mindset. And when you really think about it, and I mean generally just think and sit down and just be like, wait a minute. This is what was going on. All this time we've been believing in a proverbial God that was not meant for other people. And just like what KRS One said in A Higher Level, I know I'm going to mention that song. You should really listen to it too. It's pretty beautiful. And he said, I want a God of peace of love, not mass hysteria. I don't want a God that blesses America. I couldn't really vote for the devil. So let me take you to a higher level. That key word. I want a God of peace and love, not mass hysteria. I don't want a God that blesses America. And it's real sad when you have a culture that values money more than humanity. And if you notice that, that's where ethnocentrism actually comes into a negative standpoint. There's a difference between nationalism and ethnocentrism. See, look, nationalism, honestly, there's nothing wrong with taking pride in where you came from, but if you understand its history and you just be like, wait a minute, I don't want any part of that. See, look, if you're a nationalist, you gotta look at both the bad and the good. But if you're an ethnocentrist, You ignore one part and just take all the other one. You know, ignore the bad but promote the good. And even if the good comes out in a negative way, you just bring it out and just talk about, yeah, this is our culture. You see how great it is, and if you don't like it, we'll enforce it onto you. And like I said, I use my people as an example. And some of you may say, wow, so this is your view on ethnocentrism? And I say yes. And with that, YouTube, I say this is Broman Clash signing on out one at one. And I say, like I usually say, hope you have a great day or a great evening, depending on which part of the world you're in. And honestly, if you agree, leave a comment, like, and if you don't agree, leave a dislike or a comment. And if you want to see more videos, subscribe and I'll keep you posted. Okay? Later. And I hope you have a great time.